Attention, please. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, it's a 2 for Tuesday again, and today's date is October the 26th. This is From Russia with Love plus 9, called It's a Small World. I hope you enjoyed the show. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Let's rock and roll. Hi all, and welcome to what will be a fairly long show. But the song, The Sound of Silence. Silence is like a cancer that grows. Well, enough of the silence, because it's time to shout from the rooftops again. And tonight's show is like a spin-off from the last must listen to show, From Russia with Love plus 8, Fiction is Fact. And as part of the whole package, I will be referencing two books, Lucifer, Prince of the Music Industry, Hollywood, Disney and the BBC, by the Edward Lachlan, and also a Fritz Springmeister article. Now, the majority of people are not aware that both the music industry and the film industry, and I include Walt Disney in this, are controlled by satanic Freemasonry. And the god of Freemasonry is Lucifer, as they freely admit to in their publications for high-ranking Masons. But the majority of Freemasons do not have a clue what is going on within the higher ranks, and they are deliberately kept in the dark. Now, even the Bible clearly tells us that the god of this world and the prince of power of the air is Satan and Lucifer. So what is the power of the air if it's not TV, radio and the internet? Now, the BBC, being controlled by the City of London Corporation, Freemasons and international bankers, has no qualms about who her god is. And back in 1922, Godfrey Isaacs established the British Broadcasting Company, which was given monopoly broadcasting rights over Britain by the Postmaster General, Lord George's friend, F.J. Kellaway. And perhaps one of the best Christian writers, more on that later, to expose the Luciferian inspiration of the BBC is the American author Jeff Godwin. And in his book, What's Wrong with Christian Rock, he perceptively writes, Satan has been using the power of the atmosphere to set the stage for Antichrist since the early days of radio. And when the BBC was first set up in 1923, which coincides with ABC in America, it was an experimental station called 2MT was established, which was ran from a Marconi site situated on a military base in the UK. Now, when the chief engineer's routine airwave test was reversed, it gave praise to Lucifer. And a few years later, one of the BBC's most popular radio jingles was a little ditty called Aunt Aggie and the BBC. But when the recording of this harmless slogan was reversed, the hidden message was found: live in sin, Lucifer is nice, Lucifer exploit them. And if you thought you knew much and have connected many of the dots surrounding this cult, this will bring a whole heap more. It is dot connecting on steroids time again, and a seemingly endless chain of companies, individuals and groups all plotting and scheming together in a vast conspiracy that is barely believable. In fact, most won't believe it, as it is so outlandish it literally defies belief. And central to the plots and schemes are all the usual characters, and a seedy and at times disturbing tale that will ruin many things this evening. The sheer scale of it is vast, and many will wonder how something this large could ever be kept secret. Well, it's simple. They control the whole network in every major field of business. They install their own snakes and off they go. But the one thing they are all void of is, and the antidote to it all is in the next song. Right, let's get into this. As a preface for the next section, it can be revealed the Watchtower Society, Mormonism and Disney are all linked together. And in the past, there have been several who have tried to expose this and facing serious consequences, and many have disappeared in the past. And several non-Disney people who helped with discovering facts for this section were threatened that their children's lives would be taken if they continued to investigate Disney. Now, one of the greatest deceptions of all time is Disney. And when we got reports from victims of Illuminati mind control and Disney's involvement in it, the author said, "I kept an open ear, but I wanted some tangible proof. But there is no doubt in my mind that Disney, the man, the movies and the entertainment parks has been a major contributor to the demise of America. And Disney is one of the best, if not the best, deceptions of the Illuminati." And this expose is undoubtedly the deepest on Disney that has ever been done. And it said Christians who should have known better feed their children a steady diet of occultism and witchcraft because they have been programmed to think of Disney as wholesome. And many writers over the years have tried to expose Disney, and most have stopped before they could get their books published. And the few authors who have managed have faced vicious attacks on their character and integrity, all paid for by the Disneys. And the Disneys' power has frightened most people away from challenging them. But someone needs to speak on behalf of the victims. As Disney has not only left mind control victims in its wake, but they have harassed landowners, stolen employees' ideas, and left all kinds of hurting victims in their path. And Disney has risen to become the unquestionably largest media entertainment conglomerate in the world. How the Illuminati like to hide behind perfect fronts is the next section. And there are numerous Illuminati homes, restaurants, wineries and other institutions that are today carrying out the same type of strict standards upon their employees that Walt Disney Studios maintained. And whilst Hollywood has immersed in moral filth from the start, Walt Disney Studios had strict standards. And it was said that Walt was a shining example of the strictest legalism. But behind such strict fronts of legalistic morals, cleanliness and soberness, you will often find lots of guilt and high-level satanic ritual. And another example is that over the years this author has discovered that many of the exclusive restaurants that are meticulous in every detail are tied in with mind control and the criminal activities of the elites. And dirty money is keeping the places looking sparkling clean. And Disney well, Walt Disney did anyway, worked very hard at maintaining a great image for himself and his company. And he had a personal image builder, Joe Reddy, who worked full time to build Walt's image, as he did with Billy Graham, and the entire Illuminati threw their weight behind promoting Walt Disney. Ronald Reagan and Walt Disney were good friends and were both cut from the same die in many ways. Both men were high-ranking Freemasons, both came from socialist backgrounds, both were FBI informants, and both were involved heavily in the abuse of mind-control slaves. Yes, Mr. Reagan. Now, Reagan also served as the MC for the opening day of Disneyland, and he returned with Illuminati TV host Art Linkletter for the 35th anniversary. But another slave abuser that spent time with Disney was Bob Hope. And on the opening day's telecast, cameras showed Sammy Davis Jr., who's a member of the Church of Satan, and Frank Sinatra, a mind-control slave handler, driving the pint-sized Disney cars at the Autopia ride. And when Disney celebrated its 50th anniversary with a 2-hour special on May 20th, 1991, the program included people like occultist Bill Campbell, Hillary Clinton as an Illuminati Grand Dame, and a mind control programmer, shared with the audience that she and Bill first brought daughter Chelsea to the Magic Kingdom when she was just 4. Roy E. Disney, nephew of Walt, told the public that Disney World, which is Florida, Disneyland is California, is the story of men and women who took hold of a dream and never let go. There's a double meaning to that. And many victims of trauma-based mind control have taken hold of the illusions that were programmed into their minds secretly at Disney and never let go either. Now, among the visitors to Disneyland have been all the American presidents, from Eisenhower to Clinton, over a dozen kings and queens, as well as Emperor Akihito of Japan, Anwar Sadat, and Robert Kennedy. Both Denmark's and Belgium's kings who are in the Illuminati visited, as well as the dictators of Indonesia, the Shah of Iran, and Ceausescu of Romania. And organisations that have been actively working for a new world order for many years gave big awards to Walt in his early years, such as the B'nai B'rith. Well, I never. The establishments Yale, and Harvard universities gave him honorary degrees. And Walt Disney biographer Leonard Mosley wrote in his book on Walt Disney, he said the studio publicity machines in the film colony had gone out of their way to try to persuade me that this was a city of lawless gods and goddesses, full of clean living, sanitized stars. It was even more of a deodorized world at the Walt Disney Studio, where the publicity men insisted their boss was faultless, and woe betide anyone who tried to suggest otherwise. But Disney is perhaps the epitome of Illuminati abilities to create images, and the sinister side has been carefully hidden, albeit hidden in plain sight. Now, in order to make movies that contain the typical smut of Hollywood, sex and violence, Disney did a sleight of hand and created subsidiaries, which Disney runs, a bit like the CIA then. which has allowed them to keep their good image. And they also never showed the public the hardcore porn that was made for years in secrecy there for the elites. So behind Disney's good front lines lies hard porn, snuff films, white slavery, Illuminati mind control, and the seduction of several generations into witchcraft. And the deceptive image that Disney movies are wholesome is a triumph in Illuminati deception. Now, the rise of witchcraft into the public circle is not particularly done by Disney, but Universal Studios, and is epitomised by the Harry Potter series. The sinister, in-your-face intentions behind that series is lost upon the oblivious masses. But parents would be surprised what has slipped into cartoons. In Disney's The Little Mermaid, the castles are male sexual organs. And in one cartoon, Mighty Mouse is shown without comment, clearly snorting cocaine. There are many other examples as well, but they are just two. But Walt Disney Studios chairman Joe Roth is in charge of Walt Disney as well as subsidiaries Touchstone, Miramax and Hollywood Pictures, which were created to camouflage the Disney production of adult films. Roth, who was born in and born to, oversaw Disney's subsidiary Hollywood Pictures film called Evita. Now, Evita has its main star, the material girl, Madonna. And Madonna is in reality a mind-control slave who has appeared in numerous underground porn and ritual porn movies. And the author had an underground catalogue, and the catalogue contained a film of Madonna performing an actual blood sacrifice. She was also the main actress in Disney's Dick Tracy film, which is reported to be used for mind control. And the Disney press release announces Mickey Mouse is going heavy metal, and the album Black Acid Devil, B-A-D, bad, hit the music stores on October the 30th, 1996, during Halloween time. And the album had dark, gothic and sexual overtones. And certain pieces of film or music are used in the mind control experiments. So Disneyland and Disney World are extremely important programming centres for the Illuminati to create total mind-controlled slaves. And Disneyland is also involved with providing a place for rituals, porn and other satanic activities. And according to deprogrammed ex-Illuminati slaves, the Illuminati in the 1960s needed to shift their programming away from the military bases, because too much publicity was shone on the military bases is why, and their goal was to have some place that people from all over the world would come to without raising any suspicions, and a place which would be the perfect cover for many of their criminal activities. And the light was being shone on the Dr. Green program and the Mengele paperclip crew brought here to continue their world hegemony tour. Now, the Illuminati programmers got a big laugh out of using Disneyland as a major base for criminal activity, where they carried out money laundering, child slavery laundering and mind control. And when a child of 3 aged 3 or 4 was kidnapped, they could torture the child and then put him on a ride such as the Ferris wheel or carousel, which created disassociation from the pain, while also going along with some fairy tale programming script. An abducted child, while waiting to be picked up from one Illuminati non-parent caretaker by another, could be kept happy and distracted while waiting. And if it was in Florida, it's no doubt they were taken through the extensive tunnel system there, and the Florida one goes to a US military base. Now, right next to the Magic Kingdom, MK Ultra, maybe there is another in-your-face hint by the name of the golf course called Shades of Green. Is that Dr. Green? And it's situated in a place called Buena Vista. Now, Buena means good, but Vista can mean scenery, but can also mean a comprehensive mental view of a distant time or a lengthy series of events. Now, Tokyo Disneyland in 1991, Euro Disney followed, and has been a money-losing affair. But the Saudis, who benefit most from its mind control, gave Disney the money to keep it financially in business. And Disney, through their movies, books, toys, records, etc., has made a tremendous impact on the children all over the world. Now, their movie Return from Witch's Mountain was one of the most powerful witchcraft promotions ever made. DuckTales, which has deliberate monarch mind control triggers written into the script, is also broadcast in Poland and the former USSR. And from the time of the Roman Empire, if not before, the oligarchic leadership have been in control of both the mystery religions, and European aristocracy have known about what is called bread and circus. Now, bread and circus refers to the concept that if the masses of people are given entertainment and food staples, then they are easier to control. Hence, they are the clowns who operate the circus whilst taking your bread, which is another word for money. But Disney also hosts another form of circus called the cirque, which is another word for circus. Circus and cirque mean a ring or circle, which are binds. So the Cirque du Soleil means bound to the sun, which is the cult of Ra again. Now, Michael Marion, Bethesda, Maryland, in a future world future society, describes Disney as a control of commodities such as entertainment, and access to commodities translate into control over people. And Walt Disney World, which is spread over 27,400 acres of former Central Florida swamp and scrub forest, is the most ideologically important piece of land in the United States. It is visited by over 30 million people a year, and not only the major middle-class pilgrimage centre in the US, but by far the most important entertainment centre in the world. It is clearly Oz, the Wizard of, and a utopia as a marketing device. Now, the impact of the Disney brothers is monumental, and a large segment of humanity esteem these amusement parks as the highlight of their life. And what is highly esteemed among men is an abomination to God, according to the word of God. And behind the appearance of wholesomeness lies abominations, he said, and some of the most grotesque aspects of generational occultism the world has ever seen. And the same can be said of the churches also. Now, years ago, an Illuminati Grand Master and programmer stated, if the world only had the eyes to see the fibres which lay under the surface of Walt Disney's image, they'd tar and feather him and drag him through the streets. If only they knew what Disney's primary goal is. Now, Disney's main home was an estate in Holmby Hills, where lots of rich show business families live. And it's located between Bel Air, which is an occult word for Satan, and Beverly Hills. And Bel is also the term for Marduk as well. Now, upon researching this myself, interestingly, the main discussions on ritual abuse is on a site called Ra Info. R-A, ritual abuse, R-A, Ra. Now, Walt spent many of his nights at the Disney studios, and he'd go weeks on end without seeing his family. And the main topic of the studio by the staff was Walt's bizarre behaviour. He would not be available until late afternoon, when he would emerge from the studio's subterranean maze of tunnels. And when he was in England, Walt spent time with the British royal family and met privately with the Masonic prophet H.G. Wells. In Rome, Walt visited privately with the Pope and the dictator Mussolini. Now, Walt loved to study Charlie Chaplin, who was a member of the Collins family. And the elite decided to promote Walt Disney to deflect enormous bitterness generated by the stock market collapse. Now, the Collins family are an elite bloodline family. What follows next is a description of a highly secret, high-level satanic meeting. And this is a meeting that is held twice yearly, and to which the Rothschilds and all the mother families attend. Mother families is an interesting line in and of itself, given we are told it is a man's world. Wrong thinking. The females behind the male fronts have dominated life and skullduggery on this planet for a long, long time. It's just all hidden, like ISIS. And that, remember, 9 of the last 10 parents were female also. Now, the meeting is inside a big room, and the grandmother on the throne was a Collins. And the Collins family has been kept out of the limelight because they have more occult power than the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers. And to make money, this Collins family does something financially, such as deal with the exchange of money. You may want to get your MeWe GIFs ready. 7 children in white are brought into the meeting from generational satanic families and presented before the grandmother Collins. And they are laid prostrate in worship of her. and she would move her scepter with a snake up and down, striking the floor to show approval of a child candidate. And then 7 other children were sacrificed for the 7 approved children, one for each child, whose name would then be written with a quill using the sacrificed child's blood. The children were then given oaths, and the grandmother rotated her throne and faced the Council of 13 and declared, "This is tomorrow's generation, a chosen few." Now, Hollywood, unbeknownst to many people, in its first 2 decades was originally known as Babylon, and the movie industry was well known to be run by Jews, and many people blame the stock market crash on the moral degradation that Hollywood had introduced. And Edgar Magnin, the spiritual leader of the major movie makers, who were also part of the Los Angeles B'nai B'rith, reportedly encouraged those in the Mishpucha Jewish mafia and others who were B'nai B'rith movie makers that Hollywood needed to protect itself by putting Walt Disney in the limelight as a, quote, Christian white knight, unquote, with family values. And the white knight is talking backwards, springs to mind. Now, Edgar Magnin's grandfather's department store chain was one of the first major accounts of the Bank of Italy, and Edgar Magnin had continued his family's close association with the Bank of Italy. Now, the Bank of Italy also had close ties with the B'nai B'rith and the ADL. And with the power of the B'nai B'rith and ADL behind him, Walt was the facelift Hollywood needed after the Depression. And the Jewish movie makers pushed the man to the front of the pack who was billed as a fundamentalist Christian, albeit a Masonic Christian who rarely set foot in a church. The next section is called The Occult Porn King. Now, Walt grew up fascinated with the occult, and at some point the syndicate got him indebted to them. That's how they do it. It's classic seducement tactics these people use. But he hid another secret, that Walt became a porn king. And a victim remembers that he was sadistic and enjoyed snuff porn films. For those of you who don't know, snuff films involves the people in the film being ritually murdered. And Walt's interest in children was far from being altruistic. Now, the Habsburgs of the 13th Illuminati bloodline had a sex salon in Vienna where a porn photographer named Felix Salten worked. And Felix wrote a book called Bambi, which was then translated into English by the infamous communist Whittaker Chambers. And the elite were just beginning to form the roots for today's environmental movement. And the book appealed to Disney because Disney actually liked animals better than people. Now, in the book, tame animals view humans as gods, while the wild and free animals see humans as demons. And the book begins with both free and tame animals viewing humans as rightly having dominion over them. But in the end, the animals view all humans as simply being on the same level as animals, a vicious animal only fit to be killed. Which just happens to be the same Talmudic law premise as well. Why? Because they're all connected is why. And other reports of that Walt was homosexual, and the boy who Walt fell in love with was an actor named Bobby Driscoll, who signed up in 1946 with Disney, and he acted in the Song of the South, Treasure Island, and Bobby's voice was also used in Peter Pan. Except things didn't work out too well for Bobby. He became a meth addict at 17 and died within just a few years. Why didn't his talent and early career lead to something more positive in his life, one could ask. Now, Walt's father was an outspoken Socialist Party leader in the United States who advocated a socialist New World Order. And when Walt asked in the 1930s how his father felt about socialism's successes, his father, Elias, said, "Today, everything I fought for in those early days has been absorbed into the platforms of both the major parties. And now I feel pretty good about that." 1930s. Already both parties under their wing. And yet people still believe the two parties are different. When both are being run not by communists, because that was a cover back then, but the creator of communism, the Zionists. Now, Walt's movie Alice's Eggplant in 1925 was pure communist doctrine, where the red hen communist, oh no, not the little red hen story again, oh my God, I heard that about 1,000 times on one particular show. Anyway, the red hen leads the working chickens on a strike against Julius, the farmer manager who was representing the capitalists. Now, his magic kingdom, where he was king, was run like a socialist dictatorship similar to the New World Order plans. And employees at Disney did not have titles. Not whilst you had an all-powerful dictator Disney at the top. It was racially elitist too, as the only full-time African American during Walt's lifetime was a black shoe shine man. They still have that in the Disney park, or they did the last time I went anyway. And Arthur Babbitt claims he observed Walt Disney and Gunther Lessing at Nazi meetings, along with a lot of other prominent Nazi-afflicted Hollywood personalities. And again, what that reveals is that Nazi is Jewish, not German. And in the final panel of the Mickey Mouse comic strip in 1940, a swastika appeared. Now, it was said that Walt was vulnerable to the unions because he treated his workers terribly with long hours, low pay, in addition to repeated abuses to their dignity. And Walt's large number of employees essentially never received any credit or recognition for their years of creativity and hard work, which was all essentially stolen and credited to Walt by the establishment to build up his image. Now, in 1918, J. Edgar Hoover was busily involved with the prosecution of draft dodgers. And on his desk appeared the case of one Walt Disney, who forged his parents' signature to join the army. And cases like Walt's were watched because people who could be blackmailed, that could be resources in the future for Hoover and other people. But that year, Walt also discovered that he had no birth certificate. And Walt observes his parents' strange reactions concerning his birth certificate and other questions, and begins to deeply distrust his father. The question is, was Walt another of the hybrids program? In 1939-1940, Hoover offers to help Walt locate his real parents if Walt will work for the FBI. And this gives Hoover blackmail over Walt, and Hoover informs Walt Disney of the truth and then moves. 2 FBI men plant baptismal information of a child born to Isabella in 1890 named Jose Guirao in Mojica, Spain. The only problem with that false information is it was 10 years off Walt's original birth date. They're not very bright, are they? And that, it was said, was intended to throw people off track. And they plant a fake birth certificate for Walt in the Illinois state records for the year 1890. A bit like Obama then. And 1941, Walt confronts his father with the truth, and his father commits suicide. His real mother comes to live with him as his maid. But it's interesting they don't reveal who his real mother is, which suggests he was either a bloodline family offspring or a hybrid. And perhaps his mother was his handler. Now, Walt was a 33-degree Freemason and an occultist, and Roy O. Disney was born in 1893 and his brother Walt in 1901. They did have 3 other brothers, but only Roy and Walt were close to each other. Now, the Disney family had emigrated from Ireland to Canada and then to the US. And the father of the brothers was Elias, and their mother of Scottish descent, who may not have been the biological mother, and had the maiden name Flora Call. Now, Elias is of Greek and Hebrew origin, and the meaning of Elias is Jehovah is God. Well, I never. It appears Walt was another of the hidden Jewish people paraded as something else, in this case, Christian. Now, Roy's family later located in Napa Valley, California, and was associated with the Illuminati kingpins. And Napa Valley has been nicknamed the Valley of the Kings. And this Valley of Kings plays a major role in the dirty activities revealed in this chapter. And yet again, like the Mormons, in comes the Egypt connection. They also built a pyramid in California only seen by the Illuminati members. And Roy O. considered by some insiders to be the more evil of the 2 brothers. Now, from 1940 through 1946, Disney lost money every single year. And finally, in 1947, things turned around. and the movie Pinocchio cost $2.6 million to make in the late 1930s, which was an amount hard to retrieve at the time from the box office. And Fantasia's original release in the 1940s was a dismal financial failure. Sleeping Beauty in 1960 was a loser also. But the real money made by the Disney brothers came from the merchandising of Disney's products, the production of hard porn, and the kickbacks from various groups which used Disney for mind control programming and money laundering. Now, when Walt died, his shares in Disney were then worth $18 million, and his family, all in all, held 34% of the stock in Walt Disney Productions. And Roy O. Disney's daughter, Dorothy Disney Puder, and husband, the Episcopalian Reverend Glenn Puder, purchased property at 1677 Sage Canyon Road, Napa Valley, east of Rutherford. And this is close to the Rothschilds' Opus 1 temple. That is the pyramid. Or is it Opus Temple 1 and the Order of OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis? Now, O.J. Simpson's lawyer, Johnny Cochran Jr., was in the Rothschilds' hard-to-enter Opus 1 when the jury arrived at a decision in the O.J. Simpson case. And it's very typical for mafia families in South Boston to have one family member in the clergy and one full-time in organised crime. And the Episcopalian Church is simply a branch of Freemasonry. Now, all kinds of interesting mafia figures, Illuminati and Bohemian Grovers live up the Sage Canyon Road. And this is an area that is a large, well-kept cemetery for pets. Now, Roy Edward Disney, who's the nephew of Walt, and Walt's son-in-law Ronald Miller, is one of the Disney clan who can't stand Roy E. And in the power struggle between them after Walt's death, Roy E. won and ended up with Disney. And Saul Steinberger, who was born too, made what looked like the beginnings of a sincere hostile takeover of Walt Disney through the company called Reliance. And at one point, Reliance became Disney's largest stockholder, and Paul Steinberger is a close business partner with London's Jacob de Rothschild. Now, originally Ron Miller, Stanford University graduate, and Ray Watson, a Bohemian Grove member from Stanford University of Walt Disney's management, brought in the Bass brothers to help them deal with the Saul Steinberger's takeover and to buy and develop land. The Bass brothers are mafia. Now, Disney acquired the Bass brothers Arvida and brought the brothers into the Disney management. And the Basses sold their stake in Texaco back to the oil company and then used this money to bolster Disney up. And Sid Bass and Chuck Cobb, the chief executive of Arvida, worked out a deal with Disney. Arvida sold to Disney for $200 million, and they would profit from developing Disneyland in Florida. It's actually Disney World in Florida. And Disney would profit from the new financial strength that getting Arvida would provide. Now, Arvida owned oil fields, theme parks, and had helped create planned communities. And after the Bass brothers joined the Disney management and became major stockholders, they soon joined sides with Roy E. in a management fallout over whether Disney should buy Gibson Greeting Card Company. But with enough votes on the board, they sent Ron Miller packing. So with Ron Miller and those management men aligned with Walt's side of the family gone, CEO Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, Rich Frank and Jeffrey Katzenberg and some others made the modern Walt Disney Corporation. And as we found out in an earlier show, the aforementioned people were all born in and all born to. Now the Bass brothers acquired more land for Disney in Florida under their tutelage, and Disney now has a management team that is skilled in land grabbing techniques. The Basses own 27% in Prime Computer, as well as sizable real estate and oil holdings. And the Bass brothers also founded a local prep school in Fort Worth, Texas. And one has to ask, was that a recruitment center for the nearby US military base? And not to be sold as either. Now, in exchange for their $14 million investment in Arvida, they had gotten $950 million worth of Disney stock. Nice earner that, but that is what the mafia have always done. Now, Roy was involved in criminal activities, and several people investigating him had been bluntly warned that if they continue, they will see their children murdered. Now, the Napa Valley Illuminati activity also connects in with CIA activities. Well, I never. I was wondering when the bad penny would turn up. And of course the CIA is heavily involved in the MK Ultra programming, which may be the Magic Kingdom Ultra programming. Now, Napa Valley, where many of the members of the Disney family live, has the Illuminati's Opus One temple, as well as 2 roads lined with meticulously kept wineries owned by Illuminati kingpins and connected via secret underground tunnels. And to top off this incredible collection of Illuminati wineries, Rothschild, Mondavi, Rutherford, Christian Brothers, Satwi, etc. on the north end of a series of wineries on Highway 29 lies the CIA's medieval-looking Culinary Institute of America. So the Culinary Institute of America, CIA, is the CIA, which is at Greystone at 2555 Main Street, St. Helena, California, where numerous people have suffered torture. It should also be noted that in that same valley, the Pelosi's have wineries there as well. So what do we know about the Disney family in general? Well, several members of the Disney family came to England with William the Conqueror, and they were not known as Disney then. But because they came from the French Norman town of Isigny, Isigny, they took the name Disney and then anglicised it to Disney. But locals in the Napa area do not trust any of the Disneys, especially the Roy O side of the family. And there are other Disneys who tie in with the occult world. Wesley Ernest Disney at 32nd degree Mason, and also a Shriner who was a US congressman, a state official and lawyer in Kansas, who had a brother, Richard Lester Disney, who is a Rhodes Scholar and a Mason too. and Wesley began as a lawyer in Muskogee County, which is a satanic-controlled county, and was a Christian Scientist. Now, he lived in Tulsa, a powerful city of the Illuminati hierarchy, and likely after the massacre there of the Freedmen Savings Bank in 1921. Doris Miles Disney has been a writer of occult fiction. We'll be back shortly. Right, the next section is called A History of Disney. And during the 1920s, Walt stayed safely within the confines of comic animation, as defined by others such as the producers of Felix the Cat, Coco the Clown, and Crazy Cat. A cat with a C, clown, and then cat with a K. The Clown and the Cat. He ponders avidly. I wonder where we've heard that reference a tiny bit before. And maybe that's a co-cat-cidence. Instead of a co-red hen-cidence, a co-cat-cidence. Now, in the 1930s, Disney got some of the best talent available, and he began to settle only for the best results from that talent. And with the mob and the Illuminati behind him, and driven by indebtedness to them, Disney began to achieve outstanding results in animation. And they knew even in the 1920s and 30s what had to be accomplished in the secret great plan for a new world order. We'd mentioned in another show about that plan being early 1920s. Now, the Illuminati Great Plan called for family life to be destroyed, for children to rebel against their parents, and for the world to become more violent. And children needed to immerse in images of violence so that a violent society could be created. And the 1925 film Alice Stage Struck Ass shows little girl Alice strapped to a log heading for a buzz saw. And they also wanted to make occultism and witchcraft the common belief of the American people. And the Illuminati felt they could bring in witchcraft if they appealed to the curiosity of the child in every adult. But they did more than that, as they, along with the Ford Foundation and the Carnegies, turned most adults into children instead. Now, in the 1951 cartoon Get Rich Quick, Goofy wins money at poker, and his initially angry wife, who doesn't like gambling, forgives him when she sees how much he's won. And the gambling spirit is a very powerful spirit that the Illuminati want to instill in this nation. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is a military expert on how to condition people so that they will kill. And he writes in his book On Killing that the same process that the government has used to condition soldiers to kill is being used in the entertainment industry. And he said the only major difference is that in the military, men are taught to kill only on command, while our children are being taught to kill whenever they want to via TV's entertainment. And Grossman states that conditioning to kill begins with cartoons. It begins innocently with cartoons, and then goes on to the countless acts of violence depicted on TV as the child grows up. And then the parents, through neglect or conscious decision, begin to permit the child to watch movies rated R due to vivid depictions of knives penetrating and protruding from bodies, long shots of blood spurting from severed limbs, and bullets ripping into bodies and exploding out the back in showers of blood and brains. And what this does is the child sees horrible deaths on TV, and they learn to associate this suffering with entertainment, pleasure, and their favourite soft drink, hello Coca-Cola, and their favourite candy bar, and close intimate contact with their date. And that is subtle MK Ultra. Now, thankfully, only a very few turn out the way the controllers want them. But it's no wonder Illuminati mind control programmers have laughed at how naive the public is towards Disney. And the Disney Gargoyles cartoon is a series that is pure demonology. And the storyline is that a race of demons protects New York City. And one of the gargoyles is even named Demona. Life imitating art, because demons do run that city along with the dark elves, which is why it's called Gotham. Now, the Illuminati programmers are amazed, or were amazed, at just how stupid the masses are and how easily they are deceived. And that is because of another MK Ultra, the Milgram experiment of believe in authority and all that the idiot box tells you, all in plain sight, and yet the stupid masses fail to see it. And the Illuminati and Mafia knew that Walt had the ability to get the job done that the Great Plan called for. Well, clearly the Great Plan didn't work, didn't it? Because that's why they're calling for the Great Reset now. And that won't work either. Now, the Freemason Dr. Rufus B. von Kleinsmid, who is president of the University of South California, gave Disney an award from Parents Magazine for Walt's work with children. Can you believe that? And in the 1930s, the Illuminati Bank of America financed Walt Disney and quietly created from the Bank of Italy, which was controlled by the same oligarchy that has run the Knights of Malta and Renaissance Venice. Now, when Snow White was successful, Walt announced a monster party for all Disney workers at Lake Norconian, which is near Palm Springs, southeast of San Bernardino. And under the full moon, yes, they love their moon cult rituals and orgies, the Disney male and female workers had what amounted to a Roman orgy. Now, after the success of Snow White, Disney chose Pinocchio to follow it, and many have asked why Pinocchio was chosen by Walt. But if you look at the script, there is an emphasis on the little wooden puppet becoming a flesh and blood son to the man who had created him. And here we have a boy with no soul who is told that if he works hard, he will be given one. And that reminds me of the Abraxans with the Draco, that story, or that lie. But Pinocchio continued to tell lies, and his nose became longer and more hooked. Who is that symbolizing? But the script of Pinocchio was definitely changed to have a storyline far more useful to mind control programming, and both Snow White and Pinocchio have occult-type deaths and resurrections in them. Resurrections, just like the name of Matrix 4. And although Walt was financed by the Mishpucha, the Jewish mafia, he didn't like the idea. And Richard Rosenberg, a later president of Bank of America, is also Mishpucha. And his mother was a Cohen and was also in charge of Northrop Corp and Marin Ecumenical Housing Association. Now, Northrop Corp was the predecessor to Northrop Grumman, which is not too far from the Florida Disney World. Other examples of Mishpucha executives are R. Goldstein, Vice President of Procter & Gamble, and Marvin Coslow, Vice President of Bristol Myers Company. Remember the alt media clowns, Procter & Gamble, sent into our community to harvest shekels and take the piss? Yep, they vanished not long after a certain show outed them. Funny that. Now, in 1935, Walt Disney received the French Legion of Honor for his Mickey Mouse cartoons. And also in 1935, the Queen of England, who is Illuminati, involved in drug trade and is involved with the leadership of Freemasonry. Now, the Duchess of York, also Illuminati, selected Mickey Mouse Chinaware as gift for the 600 children. And there is no doubt from the record that powerful people wanted to promote him. And no doubt his 32nd Masonic membership and his de-Malay activities helped boost his support and Walt's bend towards the occult. All in all, he was showered with 700 awards and honours from important people, including 30 Oscars and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. In 1934, he made a cartoon about a goddess of the mystery religions named Persephone. And in the cartoon entitled The Goddess of Spring, the goddess Persephone is captured by Satan as his bride and sent to the underworld with the agreement she could return to Earth 6 months of each year. Now, the Illuminati have rituals around Persephone, Fantasia, as a feature cartoon, which was actually a flop, but as a programming tool, it was fantastic for them. The Persephone program. I personally have witnessed a victim of the Persephone program. Now, the Pinocchio film has been redone and re-released 9 times over the years, and some of the next full-length animated films to come out were The Three Caballeros, 1945, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, 1949, Cinderella, 1950, Alice in Wonderland, 1951, The Story of Robin Hood and His Merry Men, 1952, Peter Pan, 1953, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1954, and Sleeping Beauty, 1959. And very soon after the production of all these movies, the Illuminati and their intelligence agencies used them all for Illuminati total mind control programming. And Disney played an important part in the Illuminati's plan to elevate animals and dehumanize humans. And Walt used the Le Sacred au Printemps, the Rite of Spring music, for Fantasia. The Rite of Spring is another reference to Persephone. And this piece of music was written as a pagan ritual, where a virgin sacrifices herself by dancing to death. And Disney's mobster Gunther Lessing had threatened Stravinsky if permission weren't given for Disney to use the piece of music, he would use it anyway. Now, Alice in Wonderland had been done many years earlier by William Cameron Menzies, who also did Freemason H.G. Wells' Masonic forecast of the New World Order entitled Things to Come, and the film Invaders from Mars, which is indicative. On July 31st, 1995, Disney merged with Capital Cities ABC, with Disney in nominal control. Now, actually, Capital Cities and ABC has long been a CIA front company, and so the merger placed Disney squarely within the CIA ranks, although in reality it has been in bed with them for the entire CIA history. Now, the Illuminati controlled corporations of Coca-Cola and the drug firm Johnson & Johnson, and became sponsors for Disney's early TV shows. But it's not just that the CIA were involved. A retired Navy Admiral, Joe Fowler, was in charge of constructing both Disneyland and Walt Disney World. So how do admirals fit into the power structure? Well, admirals are briefed each day and are given information concerning the secret power structure. And most men who are at the military level or at that military level are Illuminati, or at least well controlled by the system. There was an attempt and an intense effort to weed out any admirals who are not loyal to the Illuminati. And according to CIA informants opposed to the New World Order, CIA contractors were brought in to build the underground tunnels at Disney World, Florida in 1977. And these contractors were sworn to secrecy and only informed on a need-to-know basis, and why the CIA was involved with an amusement park, which was to work on the secret tunnel project, and that took an above top secret clearance. So that's 30 plus, at least, maybe 40. And a major programming centre was constructed under Lake Holden. And the tunnel system was built for programming trauma-based, total mind-controlled slaves. And in spite of draconian measures of secrecy, perhaps draconian is the operative word for the CIACAs, or CIACAs, numerous lawsuits, both Fed and state, were filed over the years by victims trying to expose the Disney World programming tunnels. Now, eventually the programming centre was dismantled, cleaned up, and a maintenance tunnel level and a casting tunnel level were open to the public. But during its heyday, the programmers, military and intelligence men, had exotic offices underground with unusual programming equipment. Perhaps it was the Montauk chair. Remember the chair in the series The Dark? Now, it doesn't take any imagination to realise that if Disney carried out mind control programming above and below ground, that they would need tight security to protect their secrets, and indeed was such the case. and Disney amusement parks have been granted draconian powers wherever they've been built, and the Disney parks have also employed armies of spies. What, cats? Oh, the other type, yeah. Dressed like tourists to spy on Disney employees, and one ex-worker who was 10 years with Disney was caught discussing his divorce with another worker. And since divorce doesn't fit with the wholesome image that Disney wants, he was fired. Now, the entire world system pulled together to ensure that Disneyland got the image and publicity that the top 13 Illuminati families and the various syndicates wanted it to have. And for 50 years, they have done this. And when something that everyone thinks is clean and wholesome and is not attacked by the world system, that should raise eyebrows amongst thinking people. So why has Disney gone untouched? Well, Disney's occult themes of world citizenship, witchcraft, humanism and idolatry have also been long running. And according to an Illuminati mind control programmer, when Disney worked on his cartoons and amusement parks, colours, special colours and colour combinations were specifically chosen for mind control programming purposes. Colours, not just frequencies. And the wonderful world of colour, under various names, aired for 22 years over the television networks. That was mind control also. In 1955, Walt Disney made his cartoon character Mickey Mouse. Mickey in reverse is wicked. Real by creating a fan club, and the Mickey Mouse Club, which aired 5 days a week, usually just as children came home from school. And 24 children called Mouseketeers would help Mickey. Disney used his Mouseketeers to play all the roles in an Oz movie, Rainbow Road to Oz, which was actually never shown to the public. Now, adults today, both men and women who received Mickey Mouse programming during the 1950s through 1970s, can still be seen with Mickey Mouse clocks or sea locks, watches to watch over you, lampshades, knickknacks and t-shirts. And beginning in 1964, 30,000 acres was secretly purchased at $200 an acre in the Orlando, Florida area, just west of NASA's Cape Kennedy. NASA is linked with Disney, which is why you have Epcot. Now, to purchase this, they used phony names and were paying in cash. And Disney buyers bought the land and swore the sellers to secrecy. And in 1971, Walt Disney World was opened to the public. Bob Hope and others participated in a Disney special on October 29, 1971. And by 24 years later, 500 million people had passed through those gates. Now, the Epcot Center was another dream of Walt Disney's. It means experimental prototype community of tomorrow. And it was to be an extension of the massive mind control being carried out at Walt Disney. And some of that section is sponsored by NASA. And it's not unusual to see crowds of over 48,000 people per day descend on Walt Disney World and the Epcot Center. And in reality, many visitors begin the day enthusiastic, and after a day of hot sun and waiting in long lines with large crowds for imitations of reality, they end up zombie-like and looking forward to getting back to their hotels. And yes, I can agree with that statement. Perhaps the other acronym of EPCOT is better. Every person comes out tired. Now, some of the spooky events like Snow White's adventures or the oversized heads of the Disney characters walking around can leave the little preschool children terrified and dazed for the rest of the day. But there was a ride in the Magic Kingdom called Alien Encounter, and is a feature that invites tourists in for a demonstration of interplanetary teleportation. And when the demonstration as planned breaks down, an alien appears and terrorizes the audience. An acute creature is hideously fried, deformed, and then vomited into space, screaming. And here are some of the comments from the visitors. Alien Encounter is one of those rides I can say I've seen and that I have no intentions of ever doing again. In fact, parents who take children under the age of 6 should be brought up on child abuse charges. Another said Alien Encounter was the worst experience for my 10-year-old and almost every other child in there. And it starts out cute enough during the pre-show, but the actual show is a disaster for children. My daughter screamed and cried in terror throughout the whole show. I've been on that show, and yes, there is lots of screams, because when it malfunctions, all the lights go out. Total darkness. And then sparse lighting, and then you can feel an alien breathing on the back of your neck. It's fairly harrowing. And the woman whose daughter screamed said when we left there wasn't one child with dry eyes, even sturdy looking 12-year-old boys were crying. And she said, I admit the experience gave me the absolute heebie-jeebies. It was way too intense for me. But that was the whole mind control point of it, you see. Because these people get off scaring children and adults alike. With increased fear brings in more adrenochrome, remember? And the non-ET abductions begin. Now, Michael Eisner initially rejected Alien Encounter because it was not scary enough when it was being considered as an addition to Disney World. And Snow White's Adventures was one of what the Disney people called dark rides. Now, after a while, a sign appeared with a witch warning people that the attraction was scary, and later in 1983 they renamed it Snow White's Scary Adventures. And when the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs film came out, England banned the film to be seen by any child under 16 unless accompanied by an adult because of the scary content. Now, Disney has contracts in Florida and California with the schools, and they make field trips to the Magic Kingdom that are arranged with Disney. And Epcot itself receives tens of thousands of children in this way during March, September and October. And high schools use the Magic Kingdom for proms or senior nights, and some couples use the facilities for weddings. And Modern Bride ranked Orlando as the #1 honeymoon destination in the world. Now, some weddings are done with cartoon characters, as Disney offers fairy tale wedding packages, which is a great deal for two mind control slaves, as they can reinforce their program while getting married. and a remake of Alice in Wonderland came out in the modern Honey, I Shrank the Kids. In the 1990s, the Illuminati-controlled companies continued their promotion of Disney, and for instance, the Nestle family's company promotes Disney movies on their chocolate bars. Now, the Nestle family is exposed in the booklet Illuminati Control Over Foods and Grains as one of the elite black nobility families. In 1996, Walt Disney World created an actual residential town named Celebration on its property, and this is a self-contained community that has around 20,000 people living there. Are they mind-controlled slaves or just over-the-top brainwashed citizens? Now, I personally did quite a lot of work in that town, and it's very picturesque and beautifully landscaped throughout. It really is well done. But perhaps not so much fun for the homeowner. Trash cans must be kept out of sight, otherwise you get fined. Your curtains, blinds for windows have to be approved by the committee, and painting your house also. There is restricted parking and very excessive property taxes, all to live in the village. The average seemed to be around $12,000 to $15,000, and that was 15 years ago. But the whole town is run like a concentration camp at times for the homeowners. The next section is some Disney people of interest. I'm going to start naming names. And the close associates of the Disneys are very revealing. And the public can get a feel for Disney's attitude towards Illuminati bloodlines in the Disney movie The Happiest Millionaire, which is about Anthony J. Drexel Biddle and Angie Duke. Now, Warren Beatty is from the Illuminati Beatty family and starred in Disney's Dick Tracy. And the Dick Tracy film uses colour in a special way, and this ties in with the colour programming of mind control. Now, some total mind control slaves have programming based solely on Disney's Dick Tracy movie for them to track down and kill targets. And Warren Beatty's sister is Shirley MacLaine. And Shirley MacLaine is not what she appears to be. Her father was a professor who was a CIA asset, and she was used by the CIA as a sex slave. And she became popular with the studios because she went to bed with the correct people. Now, she was married to a man in the NSA for nearly 20 years. And her adopted name, MacLaine, is a pun on McLean, Virginia, where the CIA programmed her. And she was used by the CIA in an operation in Australia, where the CIA used her as a sex slave to compromise Andrew Peacock, an Australian MP, so that they could establish the Nugent Hand Bank for their dirty money laundering. And she's also friends with the Satanist Stephen Nance, who has provided her with some of her teachings. And the CIA has programmed many of their New Age slaves, all to adore Shirley MacLaine. And an example of this is Krista Tilton, one of their mind control slaves, who revealed in an interview how she considers herself a born-again Christian, oh dear, but had mysteriously been drawn to Shirley MacLaine. And during her life she has gotten repeated psychic urges, that is, strong urges to do things and go places which she doesn't understand. And after hypnosis, Krista drew pictures of the doctor who had programmed her. Now, Krista has had a federal agent monitor her constantly, and her husband has seen this agent, who has shown up on her doorstep and made calls to her. But Krista is just one of hundreds of victims who have all been programmed to adore Shirley MacLaine. Shirley Temple Black sat on the Disney board of directors from 74 to 75, and her films were used for some of the early 1940s and 50s programming and teaching slaves body movements and dance. Now, she married someone from an elite network family from San Francisco called Charles A. Black, who was a lieutenant colonel in the Pentagon who lived in Bethesda, Maryland. Now, Black was likely not the real name. It was more likely the colour-coded program that person was running. And in fact, Lieutenant Colonel Black was likely a handler, not her husband, which may have been unbeknown to Shirley Temple, which means she went through stage 4 MK Ultra. At that stage, you are given a new personality and a CIA handler and family as your husband, and that is all they remember. No previous friends, lovers or families are remembered at that stage. So was Shirley an early example of brain stem scarring to get geniuses, as Shirley's brother appears to have developed multiple sclerosis from brain stem scarring? Now, Shirley represented the US at the United Nations General Assembly in 1969, also belongs to the Sierra Club, and has been decorated with the Cross of Malta. And Shirley has shown clues that she may have been an Illuminati mind-controlled child protege. Warren Buffett, a major stockholder in Walt Disney, he also owns 40% of Berkshire Hathaway, and Buffett himself owns 24 million shares in Disney. Now, Buffett is part of the Aksar Ben fraternity and monarch slave abusers who were exposed in the Nebraska savings and loan scandal. And he is perhaps the second richest man in America, and too powerful, it is said, for anyone to touch. Now, the Lincoln savings and loan scandal is linked to the scandals connected to the programmed child slaves at Boys Town. The Tommy Dorsey Band. This band has had a number of men in it who are mind control slave abusers associated with the network, and Frank Sinatra got his big break with this band. Michael Damon Eisner, chairman at Disney, is a CIA asset and connected to the mob. And a paper trail connecting Michael Eisner and Walt Disney Company to mind control is their support of the Boys and Girls Club of Napa Valley, which is used as a supply of children for pedophilia and mind control. Now, the Boys and Girls Club is used to supply caddies for the Silverado Country Club, where these children are also used as mind-controlled slaves for the sexual perversions of the elite. And you may notice that Napa's Silverado Country Club invites in celebrities such as CIA asset Pat Boone, Joe DiMaggio, ex-husband of sex slave Marilyn Monroe, Engelbert Humperdinck as a slave handler, Digger Phelps, Notre Dame's coach who uses slaves, and Jack Valenti, CEO of Motion Picture Association and a Bohemian Grover, for a golf tournament, which is billed as a benefit for the Boys and Girls Club. But actually the benefit for child slaves is they get to caddy and sexually service elite perverts. Perhaps the shades of green golf course back in Florida makes more sense now. Now, Michael Eisner came from old American money, rich merchants and lawyers. And Michael grew up in luxurious Park Avenue, and he went to an elite private school, Allen Stevenson. At age 14, he then went to Lawrenceville School, and Eisner's class included the New York governor's son and other sons of powerful men, such as the son of the Saudi prince, Turki al-Faisal. And the school is also a prep school for the establishment's entertainment industry. Rich Frank was president of Walt Disney TV Media Division, and he acquired the estate of Van Hoffen-Wiggen. And when Van Hoffen-Wiggen fled the country and vanished when Landvest began to be exposed, the Landvest Mortgage Inc. was a drug laundering, drug smuggling operation operating out of Napa Valley. And it was also the fastest growing real estate mortgage company in Northern California until its drug smuggling began to be exposed. And millions of dollars of investors and creditors have disappeared, leaving lots of hurting people, and the mortgage company filed for protection from creditors in a US bankruptcy court and is still in operation. And international financier Edmund Safra's private bank, the Republic National Bank of New York, launders money from the Medellin drug cartel. Now, Safras are tied in with the Rothschilds, and the Rothschild City Corp gave Republic National Bank the transaction ability to issue international world bearer bonds and banknotes. And then we have the Luxembourg Belgian branch of Banque Nationale de Paris issued a bearer bond that was connected to the Lendvest drug running operation. In Britain, US citizen Mike Spire ran the British operation of Lendvest and Invest. Now, Lendvest parent was Invest, which has operated in the UK, Switzerland, Saudi Arabia and Paraguay. And Lendvest has been an international CIA mafia drug running operation with Illuminati overtones and connections to it. Also connected to this cult is Vincent Price, and he has been one of the major influential occultists who has provided the world with many occult horror books and scripts. And Price's good friend John Hay Whitney is an Illuminati kingpin and vice president of the Pilgrim Society, and was raised into the Illuminati through the Yale Scroll and Key fraternity. So now you know who the Pilgrims were and are. Yet another fake fairy tale that the Americans have been fed. The next one are the Osmond brothers. Merrill Osmond's boys were discovered at Disneyland when they were visiting the site in 1962, and the Osmond boys did some television appearances for Disneyland, such as Meet Me at Disneyland and Disneyland After Dark. And considering the mind control programming done to these Osmond children, those TV shows were a cruel joke. Meet Me at Disneyland and Disneyland After Dark. And both Donnie and his sister Marie are programmed multiples who have been subjected to a lot of abuse, and they both have good front alters. And the father made millions from drugs, porn and white slavery, and is part of the Mormon Illuminati front. And the Mormon front of the Illuminati has gotten a lot of good publicity off of the Osmonds. The Mormons did white slavery, as well as several other heinous abuses. Now, Marie Osmond has adopted 3 of her 5 children, in spite of her busy singing schedule, which includes around 200 singing shows a year at places like mafia-controlled Atlantic City. And in terms of occult families, adopted children are often programmed children, and so this is a clue that her children have been programmed also. In other words, she becomes the handler. Now, Michael Ovitz was the number 2 man at Walt Disney for a while, until near the end of 1996, when Michael Ovitz National Mercantile Bank Corp, yet again linked with Bankins and Savings and Loan Group, began getting into the quicksand of several lawsuits and scandals. Attorney Robert Strauss represented him. Now, Illuminati member Robert Strauss has been a lawyer connected with drug running and the mafia. He was also an FBI agent from 1941 to 1945 with Hoover, a member of the Washington, D.C. Bar, and Bush Sr. appointed him the U.S. ambassador to Russia. He has also been on the board of directors of the Illuminati's PepsiCo and the Illuminati mafia-run MCA. And he has also been known to threaten people using mafia terms, and reporter Anita Bush, not Bush, the shrub, Bush Gardens, was investigating Ovitz, and she got violently sick from the MSG in her food as she was interviewing him. And to top it all off, Ovitz followed up her story, which questioned his actions by sending her a gift-wrapped package of MSG with a one-word note saying, "Enjoy." Well, that ruined a few names and bands, did it not? Disney and its mob connections. When the author spoke to the co-authors, Deep Illuminati Alters, her different personalities that had been created one by one by her fragmented mind by way of satanic ritual abuse trauma that is based on mind control techniques, their reaction was that Disney had been described to them as a syndicate within a syndicate. And they said that while in the Illuminati, they were aware that Disneyland had their own government, their own rules, and their own police force. And one Disneyland security supervisor says, "There is no constitution at Disneyland. We have our own laws. If Disney guards decide to, they will get very rough physically with people and assault them in any fashion they see fit. And the people they detain are often thrown into tiny cells at Disneyland without the benefit of a phone call, a toilet or water. And the judicial system turns a blind eye to whatever Disney police do. And many people have to pay Disney to get their children out of a Disney cell and never get due process of any law. And this type of treatment, they say, has gone on for decades, and it is almost a daily occurrence at Disneyland. So what is clear is Disney operates the Talmudic law then. We don't follow any laws, we just make up our own. But Disney was also connected to the mob, and here is some of its history. Now, traditionally, the mob crime bosses have a yearly summit, and in 1931 they held their secret annual conclave at Wappingers Falls, New York. And at the meeting, attended by about 300 overlords and soldiers, the heads of the family clans discussed their crime family agendas. And they decided where the first national mafia convention was to be held, and once the mafia was able to hold their yearly private national meetings, they were then able to coordinate their activities. And in that meeting, the first one, the short-term plan for the mafia was to control the film industry in Hollywood and to penetrate the unions better. And they planned to extend their power base into politics, the Harvard, Stanford business schools, as well as the finest corporate boardrooms. And they intended and have succeeded in getting some of their offspring to produce and or direct TV and films. And they would eventually have an increasing presence within the Bohemian Grove membership. The filmmakers and the mafia both had power and both had money. But rather than fight a protracted war, they proceeded to make a deal, and Hollywood was declared a free zone where all the mafia Mishpucha families could operate without fear of a turf war. And biographers have been puzzled why Disney went into such a traumatic depression after Henry Cohn helped him. But the tough guy Henry Cohn made sure Walt knew who was boss, and after this Walt would lock himself in his room and wept uncontrollably for hours. And biographers point out that Walt was very reluctant to have any children of his own, and that he was impotent with women, including his wife, much of the time. And his impotency, they say, to carry out normal sex may help explain his secret sexual habits. Now, Walt's Masonic brother, Carl Leimal, offered Walt a good deal to help him recover from Henry Cohn's abusive control, but Carl wanted the copyright to Mickey Mouse in return for the help. And instead, Walt signed a contract offered by Joseph Schenck of United Artists, who was one of the mafia's illegal drug kingpins. Joseph Schenck went on to found 20th Century Inc., which later merged with Fox in 1938 to form 20th Century Fox, whose board of directors would include two Illuminati kingpins, William Randolph Hearst and Malcolm McIntyre. Now, Joseph Schenck's brother, Nicholas Schenck and Marcus Lowe, merged Metro Pictures and Goldwyn Pictures and named Louis B. Mayer, Mayer being Rothschild, as its head. And MCA, headed up by Illuminati kingpin Lou Wasserman, gained a monopoly over the American film industry with the secret backroom deals that they made with Ronald Reagan's Screen Actors Guild and Petrillo's American Federation of Musicians. Frank Sinatra and Walt Disney were both friends of Ronald Reagan, and all three believed in mind control. Now, Reagan and Petrillo in turn worked with the Mafia's Council of Nine, which included Anthony Accardo and Sam Giancana, which at one point divided the US into 24 mob territories. And on February 11th, 1987, Walt Disney Company was reincorporated in Delaware, which is the only state that allows total corporate secrecy. No one can find out who is really running a Delaware corporation, and many other secrets can be hidden under Delaware's corporation laws. But because Disney has shaped the myths of America for several generations, the American people, it is said, are rooting for it to succeed. Maybe not so much after this show comes out, depending on how far it travels. Now, the Disney executives had figured out how to steal land all across America, and over the years Walt Disney has developed several very sneaky, reliable techniques to acquire land. And Disney works with the government officials and local bankers to line up special deals so they can succeed in their plans. Disney set up 3 banks in Napa, California, and their banks made loans to old families in the valley. And the trust and wills for the families were made up by Stanford University graduates. And these people sat on the boards of these banks or connect with the boards of these banks. And they charge large fees and know every trick in the book to rob people of their estates and their living trusts. Now, the Stanford grads who connect in with the intelligence agencies and the mob use certain code words when they set up their businesses, such as resource, evergreen, and Pacific. And there are a number of scared landholders who are being intimidated to sell their land in the Napa Valley region. Disney and the government is next, and just prior to World War II, the FBI recruited Walt Disney, and his job was to spy on Hollywood or anything else that looked suspicious. And Walt Disney became a paid special correspondent asset of the FBI in 1954, which means others reported to him, and he reported to an FBI agent named E. Conroy. In 1993, when news broke about Walt Disney's FBI membership, ex-CIA head Webster worked with the Disney family to cover it all up. And Webster went on TV and had interviews to spread the fabrication that Walt was not connected to the FBI. Now, because one of the countless items that Disney was involved in was the investigation into the disappearance and rape of a 6-year-old child, Rosemary Riddle, in 1961. And according to documents gotten from the Freedom of Information Act, W.D. Simon was the FBI agent who met with SAC Walt Disney in Los Angeles about the case. And W.G. Simon has been one of those people who has been publicly lying by claiming that Walt Disney was never an FBI agent, but the paper trail proves otherwise. So why is it so important to the FBI and CIA to cover up that Walt was an FBI agent? Because Walt also worked for the CIA as well, as it turns out. And the reason the FBI and CIA are so touchy about letting people know that Walt worked for the government is that the network knows how the FBI and CIA work together to procure children for mind control programming purposes. The FBI and CIA work together to procure children for mind control programming purposes. And because Disney and Disneyland played such an enormous role in mind control, Disney's connection to them is in reality a man of fact sitting on top of an enormous, ghastly secret. Now, for the United Nations, Walt Disney created It's a Small World attraction for UNICEF for the 1964-65 World Fair. And this attraction was moved to the theme parks and has been a major feature for mind control. Now, Walt used his FBI connection to destroy the life of Art Babbitt, who had led the strike against Disney in 1940, and he was part of the FBI that is involved with the child procurement and mind control. Now, in the 1950s, the Illuminati began organising covens on the West Coast and began solidifying their power. And in recent years, Disney decided they wanted to build another amusement park called California Adventure across from Disneyland. A little bit of research for you all. Look on a map at the close proximity of Silver Lake, Griffith Park, Getty's Museum, Disneyland, Disney Hotel and Hollywood. Under the Silver Lake, he mentioned in the last one. It's there. Think tunnels. Now, Anaheim City Council was enthusiastic about the expansion in spite of lots of local opposition. And the locals complained at council meetings that the city had no business going hundreds of millions of dollars into debt just to help a corporate giant. And yet Anaheim will go on to issue $400 million in bonds. And you wonder why California is bankrupt. Now, locals also raised concerns that the public school system in Anaheim is stressed to breaking point, where they are considering going to half days. This was a couple of years ago. And that the Disney Corporation should give as much consideration for the school children of Anaheim as they do for their amusement park. Well, actually they do, but not in the way you think. And Disneyland's president, Paul Pressler, bragged about Disney's new California Adventure amusement park is really a celebration of the fun, the beauty, the people, and the accomplishments of this magical state. And he said, we have really set out to try to capture a bit of what the California dream is all about. Yes, complete La La Land. The land of illusion and fakery with a very sinister twist is what California is all about. Now, in an office memo from the new SAC FBI agent to Hoover in December of '54 states, Mr. Disney has volunteered representatives of this office complete access to the facilities of Disneyland for use in connection with official matters. Historically, we now know that Disney's use for official matters included mind control. Disney and mind control. And once a person is familiar with the programming scripts, the person merely needs to watch the Disney Adventures in Wonderland to see Disney mind control at work. And in that series, it showed a white rabbit create a world in your mind with a ring, which is a bind in basic terms, or worse, the voice-to-skull technology. Now, Alice went through the mirrors, a white rabbit, which is the programmer, reads a book to a little girl, and the audience be told by the show, the white rabbit is our only hope. In other words, mind control is man's only hope. Now, the deeper altars of Illuminati slaves who are programmed for spying, blackmail, seduction and assassination, and are given programming to live in a fantasy world. And much of this type of programming has gone on at Disneyland, and visitors are taken in a boat where dolls sing It's a Small World. And these doll world parts are used for programming, assassination and espionage altars. And the song and dolls play important roles in these altars' mind control program. And both rituals and programming go on at Disney amusement parks, both during the day and night. Now, Stephen Rockefeller and Walt Disney travelled and spent time together with Dr. Hadley Cantrell, an establishment expert on human behaviour. And America's Most Wanted has a fairly large file on children who have been kidnapped at Disney amusement parks. And one mother who got separated from her child when getting off a train frantically told a guard her child was missing, and the guard took her to a monitor room where they saw the kidnapper carrying the child out of the park with the boy slumped over his shoulder. Now, in that short time, the kidnapper had drugged the child, cut his hair different, and put a different shirt on him. And as written before, white slavery is part of what Disney is all about. All of which tells you it is a Jewish Elite program and the Hebrew Anunnaki program. And an insider states that the Disney police are definitely part of those moving and abusing innocent children who are brought in for occult rituals. Employees do not enter the theme parks like the visitors, nor do they move around like the visitors. They have underground tunnels and entrances and facilities for that. And Walt Disney teamed up with Los Alamos and Sandia Labs, two other groups which are heavily involved in mind control and people control, to develop body scans, branding and access codes for the visitors to Disney's theme parks. And each of Disney's theme parks, such as Disneyland, Disney World, Euro Disney, have vast underground facilities. And the underground areas also have programming rooms. And people are coming and going 24 hours a day at the Disney theme parks. Now, Fantasyland is one of the most used tours for mind control purposes. It has merry music, an incredible castle, boat rides and storybook characters. And inside Fantasyland are Illuminati programming sites, such as the Mad Hatter teacups, the King Arthur carousel horses and Snow White's forest. And in the far corner of Disneyland's New Orleans Square is the Haunted Mansion. Life-size holograms are created at the Haunted Mansion and dance in sync with the music and then fade out at certain points. There is also a hologram of a woman's head in a crystal ball which chatters non-stop. A real good laugh for the programmers of a little child, it is said. But when you get towards the end of that ride, you are then given a chance to look into a mirror where a hologram ghost will nestle up beside you. Now, Star Speeder is another great programming location at Disneyland, and that was the creation of George Lucas, yes, that one, and the Disney Imagineers, and the technology was borrowed from Star Wars and is similar to flight simulators used by the military. And US Special Forces, which carries out mind control, owns 2 hotels near Disney World, and the Mormons have one also. Now, one of the Disney executives began one of the most horrible trauma-based mind control programming centers in Los Angeles called Magic Castle, a comedy warehouse. And this trauma center had horrible torture chambers, and children were brought in from South and Central America to be programmed at the Magic Castle. Now, a brave Los Angeles policeman exposed the place, for which he lost his job, and eventually was able to get the site closed. Now, one of the things I learned during my research was the children in South and Central America, and I'm talking tens of thousands of them, were all triggered by an advert for Coca-Cola. Trinity Broadcasting Network, which was the world's largest Christian TV network, and the god Bacchus, Satan, can be seen carved on a monument in the courtyard of TBN's headquarters in Orange County, California. Christendom is a total mind control program to obfuscate the white race based on pure illusion, and is a trap to abuse, enslave, and eliminate the white race. That is my statement. Christendom is a total mind control program to obfuscate the white race based on pure illusion, and is a trap to abuse, enslave, and eliminate us. Disneyland now has a temple to the Forbidden Eye, which is simply a temple to the all-seeing eye, the Illuminati symbol. And right smack across from the centre to Disneyland is the Assembly of God's Melodyland Christian Centre, the birthplace of Trinity Broadcasting Network. Melody from Greek melodia, a singing, a chanting. Chant, 1670s, a song, especially one slow and monotonous. Meaning a Gregorian melody, usually of medieval origin, is from 1789, meaning monotonous recitation of words is from 1815. In other words, mind control by monotonous reciting of spellcasting words or tunes, mantras and mandalas also are essentially incantations of mind control. Which brings in, From Russia with Love 8, and the Indian spiritual group, the mantras and mandalas. Now, the Assembly of God denomination has been heavily infiltrated by the Illuminati and has been heavily used as a front for programmed slaves. And Paul Crouch, the president of Trinity Broadcasting Systems, was affiliated with Melodyland in 1973 when TBS was getting started. TBS is just another front. And the author of that information is religious, and therein lies the problem, and so will not attach any blame to the church when he says it was infiltrated by the Illuminati. No, the church is part of it. We cannot carry on making excuses for the church because people can't face the reality that religion is a front to destroy humanity. They will not attach blame to the church even when overwhelming evidence than this Disney exposure has been revealed. And the problem is, it all depends on how far you raise your truth barrier. For most people, it's around their knees. So how can you see? The truth barrier has to go to the crown. And then you see. Now at that time, Melodyland was a rich, heavily infiltrated, charismatic church. No, it wasn't. It was part of the front, with its share of programmed multiples. Now, multiples are single people with their brains fractured into multiple personalities called alters. Now, the average multiple has 6 to 12 alters. In 1973, the minister Jim Bakker and his wife Tammy Faye, who is a programmed multiple, were with Paul Crouch in Anaheim at Melodyland. And Crouch had been the assistant pastor of Bakker's home church in Muskegon, Michigan. Crouch's right-hand man was Alexander Valderrama, a Roman Catholic, and TBS used an abandoned military base as their TV complex, just like how the BBC started, always on a military base, and using hangars as studios. And in the early 70s, ABC put Bakker and Crouch's early shows on their affiliate stations on Sunday morning. And Bakker had already gotten his career kicked off with Illuminatus Pat Robinson and his 700 Club. Now Jim Bakker split and went to the East Coast. Now to help Bakker with his money, Bill Perkins, who had been a financial analyst for the World Order's mind control research at Sandia National Labs in Livermore, came to help Bakker run his ministry's finances. And later, TV evangelist, Bakker began building Heritage USA, which was to be a big money resort. And Bakker hired people who'd worked for Disney to construct Heritage USA. Bakker said to have studied Disneyland, Disney World and other Disney places as a model for Heritage USA. And no doubt to build the underground tunnels. Now, after Disney World opened in Florida, Jim Bakker was a regular visitor to it, and most people are aware of Jim Bakker's $265,000 payoff to Jessica Hahn to keep her sexual services to him a secret, and his long-time homosexual relationship with his right-hand man David Taggart and his prison sentence. Now, James Orson, named after Orson Welles Bakker, was from Muskegon, which is the same place that Kathy O'Brien, a freed mind-control slave, came from. Now, he was born premature and had some interesting family situations that make his family suspect. And while Kathy O'Brien got programmed via the Catholics, Jim was part of another denomination which also was into programming, the Charismatic Assemblies of God. And it'd be worth pointing out who came to Bakker's rescue when he was under attack. Ronald Reagan, Dale Evans, Robert Schuller, Oral Roberts, Billy Graham and Rex Humbard. Now, of those, all of them were Masons except for Rex, who may or may not be. Now, Robert Schuller, Billy Graham and Oral Roberts are Christian ministers who participate in using and handling mind-control slaves. And all three ministers all participate in secret satanic rituals. The last few paragraphs have given only a sketchy picture of the intimate relationship between Disney mind control and the charismatic movement and its use of trauma-based mind control. But return to Oz, 1985, this Disney film about a girl who is thought to have psychological problems because of her tales of Oz, and she was taken to a psychologist who wears a big ruby ring, the dragon rings, who tells Dorothy that electroshocks won't hurt her and that we are at the dawn of a new age. And she is sent to a mental institution to receive shock treatment for talking about Oz. And a lightning storm allows her to escape the shock treatment, and when she sleeps, she wakes in Oz. And in Oz she goes through many mind control scenarios, ruby slippers, mirrors, etc., and towards the end visits with the evil Mombi, Princess of Oz, who keeps Ozma, Dorothy's twin, as a slave. Now, Disney has put out several films on the Wizard of Oz theme, all of which were used for programming. And ABC, under the auspices of Disney, produced a lengthy 140-minute film called Wild Palms, which depicts Illuminati mind control and life. The film depicts how children are kidnapped, switched at birth, programmed via cartoons, and programmed to kill and use stun guns. It depicts Illuminati bloodlines and arranged marriages, although the name Illuminati is not used. If viewers substitute the name The Fathers with Illuminati Fathers, they will get an insider's view of life at the top. The Fathers are the handlers, whether related by blood or not. Now, the main controllers are addressed by their slaves as Papa, Daddy, or Mother. And this is true to life. The movie states that events are not happening randomly. And it also shows an underground tunnel system which has an entrance hidden by a swimming pool. And quite a few actual programming codes were said during the film. For instance, down, down, down through the pool of tears. And we're going to go down the yellow brick road now. The pool of tears. Remember the pictures of children hanging in the swimming pools of elite homes? Now, that movie was created by Bruce Wagner, an insider concerning trauma-based mind control. And the fact the movie was made shows the arrogance of the programmers' belief that their criminal acts in programming thousands of little children will not be exposed, and that people will be too stupid to realise that what is put out as fiction is actually mirroring what is happening. And it's like they believe their own script, that if people did find out, no one will care. Now, George Lucas, who directed the movie Star Wars, which is a movie planned by the Illuminati and used for Illuminati programming, also directed Disney's movie Captain EO. Now, Captain EO, who looks like a demonic entity, goes to rescue the Queen, who looks like the harlot described as the Mystery Babylon in the Bible, the Whore of Babylon. And the Queen is in captivity simply because she and her people believe in black and white, which represents good and evil. And when they renounce such a belief, they are saved by none other than Michael Jackson in the movie, who was in actual life a mind-controlled slave playing Captain EO, and it's New Age witchcraft film through and through. Now, Michael Jackson had gone to Disney amusement parks many times, sometimes in disguise, and it's public knowledge that his Jehovah's Witness family had been very abusive mentally and physically to their children. Bette Midler has been Disney's main actress, or one of them, and she's a monarch mind control slave. She has gone on tour for Disney without making money, and the movie Hocus Pocus does some hocus pocus of its own. While pretending to make fun of witchcraft, they actually teach witchcraft. And this is the reverse psychology program again. And the three witches stand for the maiden, mother and crone combo that the Illuminati reverence. But it's the three females again, as we referenced in the From Russia with Love +8 show. So Disney subtly works in deep occult things, such as the all-seeing eye on the cover of the book, the little girl promising the cat, who is a familiar spirit, that her descendants would always care for her because the cat was a generational spirit. What a coincidence that is. Now, Bette Midler as lead witch in her witch costume, which has some Mother of Darkness symbology on it, states as she gets ready to take the life force from an innocent girl, "We want to live forever, so we take children's lives." That is them telling us about the adrenochrome program. It is the essence from the Jupiter Ascending movie, where each bottle is 100 children's lives. And this is what passes off as wholesome entertainment for the children. The Disney film Fantasia is used for programming trauma-based mind control slaves, and during the 1950s, 60s and 70s, at least 90% of the Illuminati's trauma-based mind control slaves were subjected to watching Disney's Fantasia film in order for them to build the foundational imagery. And child mind control victims had their eyes taped open and then sat one-on-one with their primary programmers, so the programmers could give the scripts. And as the child watched Disney's Fantasia over and over again. But what made Fantasia unique as a programming tool is that it had almost everything the programmers needed to create the foundational imagery for their trauma-based mind control. And to build a dependable alter system means that the internal world needs a solid foundation. And Fantasia provided the means to get a solid foundation for the internal worlds that the Illuminati slaves build in their mind. It was also a masterpiece in coordinating colour and music. Both colour and music are used in the mind control techniques. Now, Fantasia, which premiered on November 13, 1940, was a financial disaster, which appears to be all Disney movies were so, but was an Illuminati programming masterpiece, they said. Now, the film was released in theatres in 1940, 1946, 56, 63, 69, 77, 82, 85 and 1990. And the reason for that was, it was in order to catch every generation of children. Now the video was released in 1991, and Fantasia has been used to train the mind to be able to visualize the programming that will be layered in. And the film is often shown to child victims around the ages of 3 to 4, with a widescreen, while the child was under a guided LSD trip. And prior to LSD, some other drugs were used. Using psychedelic drugs on 3 to 4-year-olds, it's unconscionable. But that is how dark these parasites are. A grand dame or mother of darkness often worked with the Illuminati programmer as an assistant programmer. And when a 3 to 4-year-old is shown Fantasia on a hypnotically prepared and controlled LSD trip, the colours and effects are increased by about 1,000 times. And the film then becomes more realistic than the real world to the child. At this time, the child is a multiple, but the walls between the various parts of the mind are not solid, but similar to the walls between ego states in an adult non-multiple. And the child will see the movie so many times in such vivid form and will be tested to the point that the movie will be memorized. Now, the Illuminati have been creating trained multiples for years, but they knew they wanted to program the different personalities in accordance with the best mind control techniques of the day. And for this reason, the Fantasia film was planned ahead of time. And the film is silent, almost no words except for music, so that it can be used for hypnotic visualization. Now, the New Age author David Tame states in his book, The Secret Power of Music, that Fantasia is a superb marriage between the visual and musical arts. And most of the sequences are what New Age cinema was intended to be. And the power of the movie to influence the mind stands out, and that was made for the occult world. Now, by the 1960s, the Illuminati had created a drug culture and had lots of undetectable mind control slaves running around, all of which had been programmed with Fantasia. Final part tonight. There has been some critics of Disney, but it has largely been overlooked. And Joe Flower in Prince of the Magic Kingdom, Walt Disney was obsessed with creation, driven to build magical worlds, not as many artists are, out of paint and canvas, or words, or even film, but physically out of concrete, wires, smoke, electricity, and highly programmed employees. Julian Hal Levy in Nation decries Disney taking this nation into a drift to fantasy. And he adds, one feels our whole culture heading up the dark river Styx to the source, the heart of darkness, where Mr. Disney traffics in pastel trinketed evil for gold and ivory. Eliot said, while his filmed fairy tales may have appeared at first glance to be light and dreamlike, upon closer examination they seemed more nightmares of deconstructed reality in league with the era's leading neo-Freudian modernists. This is the dark reality of the Disney Magic Kingdom and how it fits in with mind control. But because of the Illuminati's deception campaign over several generations, the American public and the world in general has been led to believe that Disney was good and that Walt Disney was a good man. Because of his image, people suspended judgment about Disney and Disney movies, and they entrusted their children to him. But people have been manipulated into a frame of mind, a predisposition that whatever comes out of Disney is good. And the public's predisposition of trust was used to introduce Illuminati beliefs and their political agenda, and to carry out a vast program of trauma-based mind control on hundreds of thousands of tiny little children whose minds and souls were stolen from them. Because many of the child slaves are programmed with roles in bringing in the Antichrist, Walt Disney and his family have played a major role for the Antichrist. Now, I'm not fully certain the Christ was for our benefit either, given the religious lying-based program, and could be possibly seen as two sides of the same coin. Although many good things have been switched into dark on this planet. It shows how far this cult operates, a vast stinking network of predators, an evil satanic-based parasitic cult. Just this show, it has mentioned theme parks, movie, music and entertainment industry, television, the government, FBI, CIA, military, pharmaceutical companies, schools, universities, health and mental centres, prisons, cops, corporate companies and churches. Almost every facet of our society's institutions used as a front for ritual abuse, mind control, sexual fantasies, snuff, all for the pleasure and amusement of darkened souls whose purpose in life is to harvest the maximum amount of energy, fear and pleasure at our expense. Some may describe this show as harrowing, a kick to the gut, negative or triggering in many aspects, and I agree. But more people have to expose this shit in order for it to eventually stop. And these shows are triggers for us all to act and shut this down. Not cower away because some truths are just too uncomfortable to face. We must stand up and face all uncomfortable truths. Because that is how you remove the dark, negative energy surrounding yourself and the rest of the world. It is time now for us all to stand up and fight. This is our time. And rid the world of this pure evil. Because these psychopaths make Satan look like a cute, cuddly character in comparison. Stop chasing white rabbits. Chase down dark, evil clowns. Stop letting them feed your head. It's time for us to get into and feed their head and make it explode into tiny pieces. That then will end this program once and for all. And the children can then grow up unaccompanied by this pure evil. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.